Hey everyone, welcome to our deep dive. And today we're looking at the future Windows Server 2025.
Sounds exciting.
It is. And we've got some great source material to work with. Microsoft just published a Learn article just a few days ago, November 19th.
Oh, wow. Right off the presses.
Yeah, it's hot off the presses, outlining all the juicy details, security upgrades, performance boosts. We'll get into the hybrid cloud stuff, but let's get into some of the specifics.
Yeah, I'm excited. There's a real emphasis on making life easier for admins, which you know we all love, but also bolstering security, building it in from the ground up.
Right. Yeah, no one wants to be patching servers at 3 a.m.
Exactly.
So let's start with this idea of the hybrid cloud. It's everywhere these days, but
Yeah.
what is Microsoft doing specifically in Server 2025 to make that transition smoother?
Well, one of the key things is Azure Arc integration. It's been around for a while, but in this release, they've really streamlined the setup process.
Okay.
So think of it like extending Azure's management capabilities directly to your on-premises servers. So it's kind of like having the best of both worlds, right? You get that control of on-prem, but with the convenience and scalability of Azure.
Exactly. And they're even offering a pay-as-you-go licensing option through Azure Arc.
Oh, interesting.
So you only pay for what you use, just like you do in the cloud.
So no more hefty upfront licensing costs.
Exactly.
That's a big deal for organizations who are kind of dipping their toes into the cloud.
Definitely. It lowers the barrier to entry.
Okay, but let's back up a bit. If I'm running, say, Windows Server 2019 right now, what's the upgrade path look like? Is it, one of those painful multi-step processes?
Thankfully, no. You can actually upgrade directly from Server 2012 R2 and later.
Wow.
So they've made it incredibly straightforward. You can do the classic source media install, or you can do it right through Windows Update.
So skipping up to 4 versions, that's a serious time saver.
Huge time saver.
But what about larger organizations that can't just flip a switch and upgrade everything at once?
Yeah, they've got you covered there too. You can manage the availability of the feature update using group policy.
Oh, okay.
So this allows for staggered incremental upgrades.
That's a smart move.
Yeah.
So once I'm up and running on Server 2025, what's the first thing I'm going to notice?
Well, the desktop experience will be very familiar. They've adopted that Windows 11 style and appearance.
Okay.
So you'll get a nice, consistent look and feel.
Consistency is always good, especially when you're jumping between a bunch of different systems all day long. But I gotta ask, are there any, fun quality of life improvements? Anything that will make admins, actually cheer?
How about built-in Bluetooth support?
Wait, really? No more messing around with third-party drivers or workarounds or anything?
No, it's right there out of the box. So mice, keyboards, headsets.
Even, audio devices, too?
Yeah, connect them all wirelessly.
Okay, that is genuinely exciting, especially for those of us who work in, lab or testing environments where cables can just be a real headache. Speaking of getting under the hood, there's another addition I saw that I think is going to make a lot of, power users happy. dtrace is a native tool now,
Yes.
just like on Unix systems. Now, for those who might not be familiar with dtrace, can you kind of break down what it actually does and why I should care about it?
Imagine being able to see exactly what's happening inside your server in real time without modifying code.
That's pretty powerful.
It is. dtrace lets you monitor system performance.
Mm-hmm.
You can troubleshoot issues and pinpoint bottlenecks with incredible precision.
So it's like having X-ray vision for your server.
That's a great way to put it.
That's why people get excited about this. It's going from a basic wrench to a full-blown mechanics toolkit.
Yeah, definitely.
And there's those annoying moments when you have to juggle between all your different accounts.
Oh, yeah.
Well, Server 2025 simplifies that.
Yes, it does.
You can add your Microsoft Entra ID, Microsoft accounts, and Work School accounts right from Windows settings.
Directly in settings, yep.
That's awesome. So it's getting easier to manage user access. But I'm assuming domain join is still the standard for most servers? This isn't replacing that, right?
No, it's more like a complement to that. Domain join is still the primary way that servers are going to be managed. But this just adds a layer of flexibility, especially for specific tasks.
Makes sense. Now, before we get into the security features, because I know there are a lot to talk about, what other little goodies are hidden in this release? Anything else fun?
Well, they've added a new Compress2 feature
Oh, cool.
for ZIP, 7Zs, and TAR formats. They also have customizable pinned apps in the start menu,
Nice.
and even a modern task manager
Ooh.
with that sleek mica material look from Windows 11.
Ah, so they're paying attention to the aesthetics, too.
Yeah, they are.
Always a good thing. What about Wi-Fi? Is that still an afterthought on servers?
It's actually enabled by default now.
Really?
Yeah, you just have to run a quick command to activate it.
Okay.
And they've also pre-installed Windows Terminal and the Wing It Package Manager
Oh, nice. So you can get up and running with your command line tools right away.
right away.
It sounds like they're really trying to appeal to both, like the hardcore command line folks
Yeah.
and then those who prefer a more visual approach.
Definitely.
All right, so let's talk about security for a minute here. Windows Server 2025 is packed with features aimed at keeping your data safe. What's really new here? Like, what are the standout features that you think are going to make a difference for organizations?
One of the biggest is Hot Patch
Ooh, yeah.
for Azure Arc Connected servers.
Okay, I've heard whispers about this. No more rebooting to apply security updates.
Yeah, that's the idea.
How does that even work?
It's pretty impressive technology.
Yeah.
Essentially, a Hot Patch lets you apply those critical OS security updates without taking the server offline.
Imagine patching your servers without any downtime.
That's the dream.
Yeah, no more late night patching marathons.
Right.
Frantic emails trying to schedule maintenance windows.
Right.
This is a game changer for businesses, especially those running those critical applications that just can't afford any downtime.
That's okay.
And speaking of game changers, Credential Guard is now enabled by default on compatible devices.
That's a big one.
Okay, break this down for me. What is Credential Guard and why should we be excited about it?
Think of it as a super secure vault for your sensitive credentials. Credential Guard uses virtualization-based security to protect those credentials from theft.
Okay.
And it makes it significantly harder for attackers to compromise them.
So it's like Fort Knox for your credentials. Does this impact performance at all?
There's always a balance with security. It does introduce some overhead,
Yeah.
but Microsoft has worked really hard to minimize that performance impact. And in most cases, it's pretty negligible.
So it's worth the peace of mind.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Now, no deep dive into Windows Server security would be complete without talking about Active Directory. It's the heart and soul of many organizations' IT infrastructure. So what's new in the world of AD with Server 2025?
They've made a ton of improvements, but one that really stands out is the optional 32K database page size.
Whoa, 32K. That's a massive jump from the old 8K limit.
It is.
What does that actually mean for organizations, though, in a practical sense?
It means Active Directory can now handle much, much larger objects and data sets,
Okay.
which is really important as organizations grow and manage more and more data.
So no more hitting those object size limits and having to come up with creative workarounds.
Hopefully not.
I'm guessing there's a catch. Something this big is probably not just a flip of a switch.
You're right. It requires a forced-wide update, so all your domain controllers have to be able to support the 32K pages.
Okay.
So it's a pretty significant undertaking. But for those organizations that are struggling with those legacy size limitations, it's going to be a big benefit.
It's like upgrading from a small town library to like a massive research facility. You need a bigger building to hold all that knowledge. What other Active Directory improvements are there? Anything that will just make admins' lives easier?
Well, there's a new object repair capability.
Oh, cool.
It helps fix objects that have missing attributes, so it's going to prevent data corruption issues.
That's great.
And they've also enhanced the auditing capabilities, making it easier to track down devices that aren't adhering to security policies.
So it's about both proactive maintenance and keeping a watchful eye on your environment.
Exactly.
I see they've also introduced a new functional level, domain level 10 and forest level 10. What's the significance of that?
It's mostly about overall supportability and future-proofing.
Okay.
It's a prerequisite for enabling that 32K database page size, for example. But it's interesting, Microsoft has said they have no plans to retrofit these functional levels for older server versions.
So if you want the latest and greatest, you got to be on the latest platform.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Makes sense. What about those organizations running older versions, though? Are they stuck in the past when it comes to security?
Not necessarily. I mean, while some of these advanced features, they do require Server 2025, Microsoft will continue to release security updates and patches for older versions.
Okay.
So they're not, left completely vulnerable. But,
It's a strong message that you need to stay current.
yeah, staying current is the best way to ensure the strongest security posture.
It's like anything in technology, You can keep driving that older car, but eventually you're going to want to upgrade to something with the latest safety features. Speaking of security, let's dive into some of the areas where Server 2025 is really tightening things up because, let's be real, the bad guys are not taking a break, and neither should our security measures.
You're telling me.
So what's on the chopping block? What can we finally say goodbye to in Server 2025?
Well, say farewell to WinKnees and mail slots for domain controller discovery.
Wait, people were still using doubly-ins.
You'd be surprised.
I thought that was ancient history.
A lot of legacy systems out there, but their time is up. They're officially deprecated in Server 2025.
Why is this such a big deal?
Well, because it really marks a shift towards modern, more secure methods for finding domain controllers.
Oh.
It makes it much harder for attackers to exploit those legacy weaknesses.
Okay, I see why that's a win. So if WS and mail slots are out, what's taking their place? How are we finding domain controllers now?
Nameset lookups are now handled in a much more secure way.
Okay.
Instead of relying on that older netlog and secure channel, Server 2025 prioritizes Kerberos authentication and the DC locator algorithm.
I'm guessing those are much harder to crack than WNs and mail slots.
You got it.
But what about legacy systems that might still be reliant on those older methods? Are they just out of luck?
Microsoft hasn't completely abandoned them. While the newer methods take precedence, that netlog and secure channel is still available as a fallback.
Oh, okay, so it's like a safety net.
Exactly. They've struck a nice balance between enhancing security, but, maintaining that compatibility.
It's like a gentle nudge towards modernization, without leaving anyone behind. So we talked about securing the process of finding domain controllers. But what about securing the information within Active Directory itself? Any improvements there?
Yeah, one key enhancement is stricter access control for confidential attributes via LDAP.
Now, for those who aren't AD experts, what are confidential attributes?
Think of them as like the most sensitive data stored within Active Directory. So things like passwords, encryption keys, that kind of information that needs that extra layer of protection. In the past, accessing these attributes was a bit too open, but now Server 2025 only allows access over encrypted connections.
Okay.
So it makes it much harder for unauthorized users to snoop around.
It's like putting those sensitive attributes in a locked vault with only authorized users holding the keys. What other measures are in place to make AD less appealing to attackers?
They've also addressed the issue of weak default passwords.
Ooh, okay.
So default machine account passwords are now randomly generated, and using those default passwords is actually blocked outright.
So no more password 123 for machine accounts.
Yep.
It forces admins to adopt stronger password practices from the start. Are there any, minimum security requirements for new Active Directory deployments?
Yes, Server 2025 actually mandates a minimum functional level of Server 16 or higher for any new Active Directory forests or AD-LDS configurations.
Okay.
So no more starting off with outdated security settings.
It's setting a much higher bar right out of the gate. I'm sensing a theme here. Big push toward encryption, modern security protocols.
You got it.
Am I right? What else are they doing?
Microsoft is really doubling down on encryption across the board within Active Directory. For example, they've completely eliminated the storage of LAN manager hashes.
Good riddance.
I know, right?
Those have long been considered a security weakness. Yeah. So what's the preferred approach now?
LDNF encryption is now the standard. So by default, all LDAP client communications are going to utilize LDAP sealing after a SASL bind.
Okay.
So it's essentially encrypting the entire data exchange.
So even if someone's eavesdropping on that network traffic, they wouldn't be able to make sense of the data.
Exactly.
But what about the LDAP connection itself? Is that secure too?
Yes, Server 2025 adopts TLS 1.3 for LDAP over TLS connections.
So this is the latest version, right?
Latest version.
It brings a host of security enhancements.
Yes. Stronger encryption for the handshake process, removal of those obsolete and potentially insecure algorithms.
Okay.
So it's just overall a more secure way to communicate.
So they're really layering on that security. What about those older methods for changing passwords?
Yeah.
Like SAMRPC. Are those still kicking around?
They've made some changes there too. While the latest SAMRPC password change method using AES encryption is still permitted for remote calls, several legacy SAMRPC methods are blocked by default.
Okay.
So they're really encouraging administrators to use more secure alternatives.
Makes sense. With all these security enhancements, though, does Active Directory performance take a hit?
Well, that's a great question. Microsoft has introduced new performance counters.
Oh, okay.
Specifically designed for monitoring and troubleshooting key aspects of AD.
Okay.
So things like DC locator performance, LSA lookup efficiency, and LDAP client behavior.
So administrators now have a lot more granular visibility into how Active Directory is performing.
Exactly.
That's crucial for identifying bottlenecks and issues before they impact users. What about managing replication traffic?
Yeah.
Within AD, any improvements there?
One notable addition is the ability to prioritize replication partners
Oh,
for specific naming contexts. So this means that administrators can fine-tune that replication traffic based on the criticality of different data sets.
so it's like having an express lane for that critical data within your AD environment.
You got it.
That's a welcome addition, especially for larger organizations. Are there any changes to how service accounts are handled? I feel like those are often prime targets for attackers.
They've introduced a new type of service account, a Delegated Managed Service Account, or DMSA. And these accounts offer several advantages.
Like what makes them so special?
Well, first, they streamline the process of migrating service accounts.
Okay.
But second, and maybe more importantly, they utilize managed and randomly generated keys.
Okay.
So there's no need for static passwords.
Which are often vulnerable.
Exactly. It's about reducing the attack surface.
Smart move.
Yeah.
Speaking of reducing attack surfaces, let's talk about Windows LAPS, which I feel like has kind of quietly become an essential security tool.
It has.
It helps manage those local administrator passwords on domain-joined computers. So what's new and improved in this area?
Well, Server 2025 brings some really exciting enhancements to LAPS.
Okay.
For starters, there's a new automatic account management feature.
Oh, cool.
So it makes creating and managing those local administrator accounts much, much easier.
So no more manually creating those accounts and managing them and stuff?
Hopefully not. It saves a ton of time, reduces human error.
Yeah. What other improvements are in store for LAPS?
Well, one that I think is going to be very popular is image rollback detection.
Oh, this is a scenario that I know can cause some real security headaches. So what does this feature actually do?
Imagine you roll back a system image, right?
Yeah.
But the stored LAPS password no longer matches the actual local password.
Right. Yeah.
This feature actually detects those situations, and it automatically rotates the password, preventing what we call a torn state, where the system's vulnerable.
It's a clever solution to a tricky problem. What other LAPS enhancements should we be aware of?
One that's both security conscious and user-friendly is the ability to generate passphrases.
Oh, passphrases. You mean like those strings of random words?
Exactly.
Okay.
The beauty of it is that they're much easier to remember and type than those jumbled up passwords.
Right.
Yet they can still meet those complexity requirements.
So it's a win-win.
Yeah.
For both security and usability. Any other LAPS features that stand out?
Yeah, they've made some nice refinements to the UI. The Windows LAPS tab in ADUC now uses a font that enhances readability, so it's easier to decipher those passwords.
Okay.
And there's also improved support for what we call post-authentication actions. This allows for more granular control over what happens after a user logs in,
Oh, okay.
using that managed account.
So LAPS is not only more powerful,
Yeah,
but it's also more user-friendly.
way more user-friendly.
I think this is a great example of how Microsoft is really paying attention to the details and making security, more approachable.
Absolutely.
Let's shift gears a little bit here and talk about connectivity.
Okay.
What's new in the world of remote access and those hybrid capabilities in Server 2025?
Well, one welcome addition is that OpenSSH is now installed by default.
Wait, really?
Yep.
No more manually installing and configuring it and all that?
Nope, it's ready to go right out of the box.
This makes setting up secure remote access so much easier.
Definitely.
Speaking of security best practices, are there any updates to those baseline security settings we were talking about earlier?
Yeah, they've introduced a new feature called Security Baseline, which provides over 350 pre-configured security settings,
Wow, okay.
tailored for various server roles.
So it's like having a security expert come in and pre-configure your server for optimal protection right out of the gate.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a huge help. But we all know that security is a constantly evolving game. Attackers are always finding new ways to exploit vulnerabilities. How is Server 2025 addressing those more advanced, sophisticated attacks?
That's the question, right?
What are they doing to stay ahead of the bad guys?
One approach they're taking is leveraging the power of virtualization-based security.
Okay.
So think of it like this. You're building a secure enclave within your server.
Okay.
Server 2025 utilizes VBS enclaves. These essentially isolate sensitive code within a secure partition of memory,
Okay.
protecting it from even the most determined attackers.
So it's like a fortress within a fortress.
That's a great way to put it.
Even if they manage to breach those outer layers of security, they hit a brick wall when they try to get at those enclaves.
Exactly.
And VBS key protection takes this a step further,
Yeah.
right? By safeguarding cryptographic keys,
Yes.
using those same principles.
Exactly.
This makes it really hard for attackers to get those keys, even if they compromise the main OS.
Definitely.
So they might have the keys to the castle, but they can't unlock that treasure chest. Any other security enhancements worth mentioning?
Yeah, they've made some notable improvements to certificate management and DLS server authentication. Server 2025 supports SHA 256 hashes now
Okay.
for searching and retrieving certificates.
Okay.
And TLS server authentication has been strengthened by requiring a minimum RSA key length of 2048 bits.
So these might seem like small details, but
They're important.
they're so important.
Yeah.
It's all about staying ahead of those vulnerabilities and just enforcing those best practices across the board. Let's talk about file sharing for a second, because in most organizations, file sharing is just like the lifeblood of collaboration and productivity.
Keeps things moving.
What's new in Server 2025 when it comes to SMB, that protocol that makes file sharing happen?
SMB has gotten a pretty serious makeover in this release,
Okay.
with a strong focus on speed, security, and flexibility.
All right, give me the headline. What's the big news for SMB?
SMB over QUIC is now available in both the standard and data center editions.
Wait, that used to be like an Azure Edition exclusive, right?
It was, yes.
What's the big deal here? Why should we be excited about this?
SMB over QUIC delivers a much smoother and more secure file sharing experience, especially over the internet.
Okay.
It combines the efficiency of SMB with the speed and security of the QUIC protocol.
So it's like having an express lane for your files, but with like a security detail escorting them.
I love that analogy.
And it's not just about speed and security, is it?
No.
Admins still have control over how it's used?
Oh, absolutely. You can enable or disable it. You can configure client access control based on certificates. You can even specify alternative ports for TCP, QUIC, and RDMA connections.
So you're not locked into those specific ports or protocols. You
Right.
can really customize it to fit your environment. What about those organizations that aren't quite ready to jump on the QUIC bandwagon just yet?
Yeah.
Are there other SMB improvements that they can benefit from?
Definitely. Server 2025 introduces enhanced auditing capabilities
Okay.
for SMB signing and encryption. This lets admins quickly identify any clients or servers that aren't properly supporting those features.
So it's all about that visibility. You need to know what's happening on your network, and you need to be able to enforce those security policies effectively. What about scenarios where you're sharing files outside of your immediate control?
Yeah.
How does Server 2025 protect that data in transit?
They've tightened things up considerably there.
SMB encryption is now enforced for all outbound client connections, and it mandates that the destination servers support SMB 3.x and encryption as well.
So no more sending sensitive data over unencrypted connections. What about those brute force attacks where hackers are just relentlessly trying to guess passwords? Is there any protection against that?
Yes, Server 2025 introduces the SMB authentication rate limiter.
Okay, how does that work? Does it just lock users out after a certain number of attempts?
It's a little more sophisticated than that. The rate limiter actually introduces delays between those failed authentication attempts,
Okay.
and this slows down those automated attacks.
So it's like putting a speed bump in front of your server.
Yeah.
It slows down those attackers,
Yeah.
gives you some time to react.
Exactly.
Smart. Any other defenses against those password guessing attempts?
You can now block NTLM for remote outbound SMB connections.
Okay.
So it's all about, prioritizing those more secure authentication methods.
So raising the bar, what about compatibility with different SMB versions?
Yeah.
Is that still a potential issue?
Admins now have granular control over which SMB dialects the server negotiates
Okay.
during connection establishment.
Okay.
So you can support those legacy clients
Right.
that might still be running older versions of SMB while encouraging the use of the latest.
So it's about that balance.
Yeah.
Supporting the old, embracing the new. What about SMB signing, which helps protect against those man-in-the-middle attacks?
SMB signing is now mandatory for all outbound connections, not just for SYSVL and NetLogon.
So every file transfer gets that extra layer of protection.
It does.
Any other SMB changes worth highlighting?
They've taken another step towards a more secure networking environment by disabling the remote mail slot protocol by default.
Remote mail slots. I thought that went out with dial-up. Why even disable that?
Well, while it might seem like a really obscure protocol, disabling it reduces the attack surface.
Right.
and it eliminates a potential vector for attackers.
Yeah.
So it's all about those small but significant steps towards hardening your environment.
It's like cleaning out those dusty corners of your network,
Exactly.
getting rid of anything that could potentially cause trouble. Speaking of potential trouble, let's move on to the world of virtualization. That's where things can get really interesting from a security perspective.
Oh, yeah.
What's new and improved in Hyper-V, the cornerstone of Microsoft's virtualization platform?
Hyper-V has received a host of enhancements focusing on simplified management, performance, and, of course, improved security.
Okay, let's start with performance. Everyone loves a good speed boost. What are some of the standout performance improvements in Hyper-V?
One of the highlights is the simplified management of accelerated networking, or AxleNet, using SRIOV.
AxleNet, SRIOV, can you break that down for us?
Essentially, these technologies allow virtual machines to bypass some of that traditional virtualization overhead.
Okay.
It results in lower latency, reduced jitter, and just overall improved network performance.
So it's like your VMs get a supercharged network connection,
Exactly.
making those network-intensive apps run much smoother.
Yeah.
But what about those of us who aren't, like, networking gurus?
Yeah.
Is this something that we need, like, a PhD to configure?
Thankfully, no. They've made it much easier to manage and configure in this release.
That's a relief. So we got faster networking, but what about those other...
Welcome back. Let's talk about storage in Windows Server 2025. After all, storage is where your data lives. And in the digital age, data is king.
You got that right. And with these massive leaps in performance and capacity we've been seeing, what's caught your eye in this release?
Well, one thing that I think is really interesting is DevDrive.
DevDrive.
It's a brand new storage volume type that is specifically designed with developers in mind.
What makes it different from a regular old storage volume?
It leverages the RefS file system,
Okay.
but with kind of a twist. It gives you really fine-grained control over security and performance settings.
So it's like a custom-tuned storage environment for developers.
Exactly. Perfect for those really demanding development projects.
What kind of control are we talking about here?
You can set trust levels for files. You can adjust antivirus settings. You can even control which filters are attached.
Okay.
It's all about giving developers more power.
That makes sense. They need a space where they can, experiment and kind of push the boundaries without being held back by restrictive storage settings.
Definitely.
But speed is always a factor, right?
Okay.
Especially with those large code bases and complex projects. How does DevDrive handle that?
One of the key features is block cloning,
Okay.
which takes advantage of RayFS's capabilities
Okay.
to speed up file copying and reduce those I/O operations.
So it's like a supercharged copy-paste for your development files.
Pretty much.
No more waiting around for those massive files to transfer.
Exactly.
But it's not just about raw speed, is it? Security is always a concern, especially with those valuable code repositories. How does DevDrive address that?
Well, you can actually create secure enclaves within DevDrive.
Okay.
This ensures that sensitive code and data are protected, even if the main OS is compromised.
So it's like a vault within a vault.
Exactly. Even if they break into the outer layer, they can't get at those crown jewels.
That's impressive. What about those of us who aren't developers? Any storage improvements for the rest of us mere mortals?
Of course. Windows Server 2025 brings some pretty impressive performance optimizations for NVMe storage.
Okay.
Those super fast solid-state drives that,
They're everywhere now.
they're becoming increasingly popular.
NVMe drives are already blazing fast. How much faster can they get?
Well, you'd be surprised. They've actually managed to squeeze even more performance out of them
Okay.
by optimizing how Windows Server interacts with the drives.
Okay.
So you get higher IOPS and reduced CPU utilization.
It's like taking a race car and just tuning it to get that extra edge. I like it. What about data protection and disaster recovery? Anything new on that front?
If you rely on Storage Replica,
Okay.
there are two enhancements that you'll want to know about: Storage Replica Compression and Storage Replica Enhanced Log.
Let's break those down. What's the deal with storage replica compression?
It reduces the amount of data that needs to be transferred during the replication process,
Okay.
which speeds things up and reduces bandwidth consumption.
So less data to move around means faster replication time.
Exactly, which is crucial for those disaster recovery scenarios.
What about enhanced log? What does that bring to the table?
Storage Replica Enhanced Log improves the performance of block replication, so it's just more efficient.
So your data's safer, and the replication process is just smoother and faster.
Exactly.
That's a win-win. But let's talk about efficiency for a second. Data is exploding, and storage costs can add up quickly. What's Server 2025 doing to help us, kind of squeeze more out of our storage investments?
They've added native storage deduplication and compression
Okay.
for the ReFS file system,
Okay.
which can dramatically reduce the amount of space you need.
Deduplication and compression are like magic tricks for storage.
They are. They make data disappear, or at least seem to disappear.
Exactly. How well do those features work with ReFS?
They work incredibly well, especially for workloads like file servers and virtual desktops, where you have a lot of duplicate data.
Okay.
ReFS deduplication can free up a significant amount of space, reduce your costs, and just make your existing infrastructure go further.
That's music to any IT budget's ears.
Definitely.
What about those who are using storage spaces direct? Any new features for them?
Storage Spaces Direct now supports thin provisioned volumes.
Okay.
This allows you to allocate storage on demand.
So no more wasting precious storage space.
Exactly. You allocate what you need when you need it, makes your storage infrastructure much more agile.
I like it. Now, before we move on to the cloud, I got to ask about SMB compression. Are there any new compression algorithms in this release?
They've added support for LZ4 compression,
Okay.
known for its speed and efficiency.
So it's a great choice for large files that need to be transferred quickly.
Yeah, it gives those file transfers a turbo boost.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. Developer-focused features, enterprise-grade data protection. Let's shift our focus to the cloud now, because the cloud is no longer this distant horizon. It's an integral part of IT strategies.
It is.
How is Windows Server 2025 making that transition to the cloud smoother, more seamless?
Azure Arc is really at the heart of Microsoft's hybrid cloud vision, and they've made some significant improvements to the Azure Arc experience.
Okay, Azure Arc has been around for a while, but what's really new here? What are the key changes that are going to make a difference for organizations?
The setup process is much, much simpler now.
Okay.
It's easier than ever to connect your on-premises servers to Azure Arc and just unlock those cloud management capabilities.
So no more wrestling with complex configurations or spending hours poring over documentation.
Hopefully not. Azure Arc is much more approachable now.
What makes this integration so compelling for organizations? What are the key benefits that they're going to gain from connecting their servers to Azure Arc?
Well, one of the most attractive features is the new pay-as-you-go licensing option.
Oh, interesting.
So instead of those traditional perpetual licenses, you can now pay for Windows Server through Azure Arc, based on your actual usage, much like other cloud services.
So it's like turning Windows Server into a cloud service.
In a way, yeah.
You align your costs with your actual needs. But what about the management experience?
Yeah.
Once my servers are connected, what can I actually do with them?
Well, that's where Windows Server Management, enabled by Azure Arc, comes in. It brings a wealth of cloud-powered management tools to your on-premises servers.
Okay, what? Give me some specifics. What are those standout features that are going to make admins cheer?
One of the key benefits is the integration of Windows Admin Center
Okay.
within Azure Arc.
Okay.
This gives you a single, unified management experience. You can manage your Windows Server instances, regardless of where they're running, on-premises, in the cloud, at the edge.
So it's like having a single pane of glass for your entire Windows Server infrastructure.
Across all environments.
That simplifies things immensely. What other goodies are hidden in this Azure Arc integration?
Well, you get remote support capabilities,
Okay.
which allows you to grant Microsoft support engineers just-in-time access
Oh, okay.
to your servers to help troubleshoot.
So you can get expert help when you need it without having to open up your entire network.
Right.
It's a huge win for security. But what about, proactive maintenance? How do I make sure those servers are running at peak performance?
Well, you get best practices assessment,
Okay.
which automatically analyzes your server configurations
Okay.
and provides recommendations for optimizing performance and security.
It's like having a virtual consultant constantly looking for ways to improve your infrastructure.
Pretty much.
What about disaster recovery? How does Azure Arc help with that?
You can leverage Azure Site Recovery to replicate your critical workloads to Azure, ensuring business continuity even if your on-premises infrastructure goes down.
So it's like an insurance policy for your servers.
It is.
Even if disaster strikes, you can quickly spin those workloads up in Azure and keep things running. Let's shift gears for a moment here and talk about software-defined networking, SDN, because that's been a hot topic in the networking world.
It has.
What's new in Server 2025's SDN capabilities?
One significant change is that the network controller is now a failover cluster role.
Failover cluster role.
Yeah.
What's the significance of that? Why should we care?
Well, it simplifies SDN deployment.
Okay.
You don't have to run the network controller as a separate VM.
Okay.
And because it's a cluster role, you get high availability,
Okay.
failover capabilities.
Less complexity, improved reliability.
Exactly.
Reduced resource consumption.
You got it. But SDN can be a bit complex to manage, especially for, those who are new to the concept. Has Microsoft done anything to make SDN more approachable? They have. They've introduced tag-based segmentation, which makes network security management a lot more intuitive.
Tag-based segmentation. Tell me more about that.
Instead of dealing with complex IP address ranges,
Right.
you can assign tags to your workloads,
Okay.
define security policies based on those tags.
Right.
It's a much more human-friendly way to manage things.
It's like organizing your network with labels instead of having to memorize a bunch of numbers.
Exactly.
I like it. What about those default network policies? Have they made any changes there?
Yeah, Server 2025 now includes new default network policies that significantly enhance security right from the start.
Okay, I'm always wary of default settings.
Yeah.
What are these new policies? How do they actually improve security?
They're inspired by Azure's security model. These policies deny all inbound traffic by default,
Okay.
only allowing traffic on specific ports that you explicitly open.
So it's like having a lockdown firewall by default.
Pretty much.
You have to intentionally open those doors rather than leaving them wide open. But what about organizations with multiple locations?
Yeah.
How does SDN help them manage those complex environments?
Server 2025 introduces SDN multi-site, which provides seamless Layer 2 and Layer 3 connectivity between those locations.
Okay.
Allows for flexible workload mobility.
So you can move workloads between those sites without those reconfiguration headaches.
Exactly. Really simplifies things for organizations with a distributed infrastructure.
Any other SDN enhancements worth mentioning?
They've actually boosted the performance of SDN Layer 3 gateways,
Okay.
resulting in higher throughput and reduced CPU load.
So SDN is not only more powerful and flexible, but also more efficient and performant.
Definitely.
That's a pretty compelling package. Let's talk about Windows containers for a moment.
Yeah.
Because they've become such a popular way to package and run applications. What's new in the world of Windows containers with this release?
One of the standout features is the introduction of container portability.
Container portability. What does that actually mean? Why should I be excited about this?
Essentially, it allows you to move those container images and their associated data between hosts without having to modify them.
So you can build a container image on one server, deploy it to another server, and not have to worry about any compatibility issues?
Exactly. It really simplifies container management, and it ensures consistency across those deployments.
It's like giving those containers wings. They can just fly from server to server.
I love it.
But you know what? We've covered a lot of ground here. I'm sure our listeners are eager to hear how they can get involved and, shape the future of Windows Server. Let's take a quick break and hear from our sponsor. And then we'll come back and wrap things up with some exciting news about the Windows Server Insider Program.
We're back, and you know what they say? Save the best for last. We've been unpacking all the cool new features in Server 2025, but
There's one more thing.
there's one more thing I want to highlight before we wrap up.
The Insider Program. The Windows Server Insider Program. This is your chance to get a sneak peek at, what's coming down the pipeline. Try out those new features before they're officially released.
Yeah.
And best of all, provide feedback to Microsoft.
I mean, be a part of that community, and shape where the platform's heading.
Exactly. You're not just along for the ride. You actually get to be a co-pilot. You get to influence what features get prioritized, how they're implemented.
How they work, yeah.
So if you're the kind of person who likes to be on the cutting edge, have a voice in that development process, then joining the Insider Program is a no-brainer.
Absolutely. It's a great way to stay ahead of the curve.
All right, so before we let everyone go, let's do a quick recap of what we've learned today. We've been on a journey,
It's been a deep dive.
exploring all the nooks and crannies of Server 2025.
From security enhancements, performance boosts, everything in between. Really setting the stage for the future of server technology.
And I think the key takeaway here is Server 2025 is more than just a collection of new features, right? It's a platform that's designed to meet those challenges of this rapidly evolving digital world.
A world where security is, more important than ever.
Performance is nonstop.
And hybrid cloud is essential.
It is.
Yeah, Microsoft's really building a more secure, agile, and efficient IT ecosystem.
And for you, our listeners, this means Server 2025 is a platform worth exploring.
Absolutely.
It can help you transform your IT environment, prepare you for whatever the future holds.
Whether you're looking to, enhance security, boost performance, streamline management, or, embrace that hybrid cloud,
Yeah.
Server 2025 has something for everyone.
And we've covered a lot of ground today, but this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's a wealth of information out there waiting to be discovered in the source material. You can find the link to that in our show notes.
I encourage you to delve deeper. Explore those features that, really pique your interest.
Yeah.
And maybe uncover those hidden gems that are relevant to your organization.
And if you're feeling adventurous, join the Windows Server Insider program. Get your hands dirty with those latest builds, provide your feedback, and, be a part of shaping the future of Windows Server.
Your insights and experiences can make a real difference.
Well, as we wrap up this deep dive into Server 2025, I'm filled with a sense of excitement for what the future holds for this platform.
Me too.
It's clear that Microsoft is committed to innovation, and I can't wait to see what they come up with next.
The future is bright.
It is. Well, thanks for joining us on this journey. We hope you've learned something new, gained some valuable insights, and, maybe spark some ideas for how you can leverage Windows Server 2025 in your own environment.
Absolutely.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep pushing those boundaries of what's possible with technology.